And all right, my name is Ken Stano with the YouTube channel History X. Thanks for watching tonight. Another live crossover broadcast, 3 YouTube channels, and hopefully visitors from the Popular Museum Ships Facebook group. All right, tonight we are talking about the Edmund Fitzgerald, and specifically, we're happy to have a guy by the name of Michael Zronick joining us tonight, U.S. Coast Guard veteran. He's going to be telling us all about his experiences when the Coast Guard ship he was on was called into action to search for and possibly rescue the crew of the Edmund Fitzgerald, which went down in November 1975. All right, people helping me tonight. We've got Shane Stevenson from the Buffalo Naval Park, Buffalo, New York. Check out their YouTube channel. Simply search for Buffalo Naval Park or go to their website, buffalonavalpark.org. We've got John Epp from the USS Slater in Albany, New York. Their YouTube channel, search for the USS Slater or check out their website, ussslater.org. Connor, thanks for pulling that up. And Connor Kilgore, pulling the lever and dials for us, monitoring your questions and comments. He is one of the administrators for the Museum Ships Facebook group, so we're happy to have him also. Hey, did you just make that?
No, you'll have that from last stream.
Oh, did I? Okay. All right. So that's who we've got here tonight. And like I said, Michael Zronick, he's in the middle, top row, out of Ohio, Uniontown, Ohio, right?
Uniontown, Ohio, yes.
All right. And like I always say, we cannot do this without subscribers and viewers. So do us a favor, submit your comments, submit your questions for Michael. You can let us know what the temperature is, where you are or where you're watching us from, what channel you're watching us through, whether it's the USS Slater, Buffalo Naval Park, or my channel, History X. So let the comments fly. Especially let us know if you're a fan of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Hopefully that's why you're here tonight. David from Australia. Hey, David.
Hey, David.
He looks like a new one. David, are you new? I don't think I.
Yeah, I don't recognize the name either.
Yeah, and we've got a couple of new members. We got Michael Bishop, who's a new member. Deidre Lynn Hughes, a new member. So thanks for joining us tonight. All right. So when it comes to the Edmund Fitzgerald, Michael, you know what? Why don't we just start from the beginning and tell us all about it?
Well, to be honest with you, the beginning is we were we got back into port after a winter buoy run. With buoy runs, we pull in all the buoys for the winter time, as ice tends to destroy all that. So we pulled in our buoy run, all our buoys, and we had just pulled into port. It was a Monday, or actually we pulled in on the Sunday, which would have been the 9th of November.
Now this is on this picture right here. This is the Wood Rush. When you say we pulled in, you were on the Wood Rush.
Coast Guard cutter Wood Rush. We were stationed out of Duluth, Minnesota. And
2 hours north.
A few of these pictures are actually the ship was stationed not only on the Great Lakes but also in Alaska. So a few pictures are reflective of what it might have been looking like in Alaska. But this one here is on Lake Superior, taking breaking ice. Right there that everyone can see. So basically, we were in port. We were going to start to pull Charlie status, which is a time where you start to fix things that maybe need fixing or go through the regular motions of general maintenance. And we were going to spend a couple of weeks in before we started to get it on the way to break ice again. We had a crew of 48, about 7 officers, a couple warrants. Rest were enlisted.
And how long had you been on the Wood Rush at this point?
At that point, I had been on 2.5, 3 years.
Oh, so you weren't a rookie or anything?
No, I'd been on her for a while. I was a second-class storekeeper at the time, and during that winter, I'd made first class, so an E6. While we were still working on trying to recover wreckage, recover the floatable, things like that. So, and it took us. So we got a call. We were all on leave, shore leave, basically Liberty, and we got a call over the radio and television stations for the crew to report back to the ship that night, which would have
Wait
been
a second.
Yes.
So, okay, so the Fitzgerald went down on the 10th.
The 10th.
This is what you were doing on November 9th. You were on shore leave.
Yeah, we came back into port. Basically, we do the things that we need to do. In fact, I'm in this picture right here. I'm on the guy standing on the shore right there. That's a young 21-year-old me. So the rest of the crew is kind of motley back then because we were allowed to have beards if we wanted and other things like that. Today, I don't know the regulations today, but we were kind of an interesting bunch, let's put it that way, but a good bunch of guys. So basically, we all had there was a crew on board to do the regular stuff that they normally do. We had like a port and starboard liberty. So some guys were on duty, some guys were off. So we were at home getting ready to watch the Monday Night Football game when across the airwaves, across the bottom of the screen of the TV, it said, the crew of the Woodrush, Coast Guard cutter Woodrush, please report back to the ship's immediate recall. And they broadcast this across the radio stations and television.
Was that routine?
No, we had never had that happen before. It was very unroutine. If we had been called in for an emergency like a rescue or something like that, typically they would call your house and let you know you got to come in. This was the first time this had ever happened like this.
You had to be shocked.
Yeah, we were. We didn't think it was real. We thought the guys were messing with us. But at the time, we follow orders, so we started to report in one by one. And the interesting part about all this is we weren't ready to get underway. We had guys trying to put the ship back together, and we had no supplies. We had just come back in from a long run, so. Myself, the yeoman, and a couple of cooks. We had to get food. We had to get a load of fuel and get ready to get underway. You couldn't just take a ship that size, throw the lines off and then fire up the engines and expect to go. It was an hour or more to get everything fired up, and then break the shore ties and get underway. So,
when you read the description, whether it's a magazine article or you even go on Wikipedia, the comment that is routinely made is that it took 2.5 hours for you guys to launch.
Correct.
And I actually had it as one of my questions that I wanted to ask you, which was, why did it take 2.5 hours to launch? And you just gave the answer right there. It was like you just got back, you had to re-provision because you didn't know how long you're going to be out there.
Yeah, and the funny thing about that is, stores weren't open at night anymore, or were back in those days. You know what I mean? We couldn't just go run up to a store and pick up supplies, so we had to go over to the base and raid their refrigerators, their freezers, grab all the food we can so we could get back underway and get out there. And of course, fuel, to get a fuel truck down there, you're talking about a little bit of time to load up fuel and stuff like that. So it took a while.
How much fuel are you talking about?
Oh, you're talking about thousands of gallons to get back underway because we use diesel. Generators ran off of diesel, things like that. So, it took us a while to get underway. And when we did get underway, not every single crew member was back on board. We had a few guys that had gone a little bit of ways away from the ship and couldn't get back in time to get underway. Those guys had to meet us in another port when we got back in again. So we got underway with a fairly large crew, but not the full complement. In the range of about 35 people were on board when we got back underway. So
I still love the fact that you guys were notified while you're watching Monday Night Football.
Right. It was one of the first Monday Night Footballs, if I'm not mistaken. So, but the other thing I wanted to say is we didn't know why we were getting called back in. No one told us. It wasn't broadcast on the air that there was a ship sinking or anything. We were just told it was a recall. So we didn't get told by our commanding officer, Captain Hobaugh, until we were leaving the port of Duluth, and then he came over the loudspeaker and filled us in on what our mission was, which was to search for the crew and the Edmund Fitzgerald itself, which had been reported as missing at that point. No one had a clue that she'd sank. We were going to look for her. So
Now, if you'd been on the Wood Rush for 2.5 years, you'd been operating out of Duluth for 2.5 years. Did you know the Edmund Fitzgerald? Had you heard of it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, you get a good. When you're doing what you do every day in and day out on the Great Lakes, you see these ships go by all the time. I think I included a couple ships pictures where we were breaking ice. I think in that one picture it was the Philip R. Clark, and I believe it was Clark, which is the sister ship of the same organization as the Edmund Fitzgerald.
I know which picture you're talking about.
Yeah. I think we were breaking ice around her to free her up.
Are you talking about this one?
No, I don't think that's. No, it'd have been the other one where the stern of the ship was to our ship. So this one maybe.
There.
I don't. That the Clark? I can't tell from my.
Can you zoom in?
I don't know. So both of these are 180s. This is the one I'm on to the left, and the other one to the right, I believe, was the Sundew. I believe
I've been on Sundew.
Yeah. So, and she's still in Duluth as owned by a private individual. In fact, we had our reunion last year. The Wood Rush actually met at the Sundew for our reunion in Duluth last year in September. So,
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
I'm very interested in the. You didn't get notified as to what the mission was until you were underway by the CO.
Correct.
But during that time, was that the Edmund Fitzgerald sank even a thought with the crew, or?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a good question.
That is a good question. We had heard that there were some ships in trouble, but we weren't told that it was missing at that time. Just missing. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you about you, because you provided us with a weather map.
Correct.
And you, as you had said earlier, you had just returned from if you want to call it a mission or whatever, you had just gotten back into port. And did you know at the time the gravity of the situation when it came to the storm?
On the Sunday when we pulled in, which would have been the 9th of November, it was a beautiful day, absolutely a gorgeous day. It was in the 60s, which is very unusual for a November day on Lake Superiors. Yeah, it was pretty warm, and the storm started to build up overnight and into November 10th. At that point, the boat was starting to move a little bit more at our mooring, so we had to shore up, add extra lines to the ship to keep her from breaking a mooring. And so we kind of had, we were getting shoved around a lot by the winds on the morning of November 10th. But we had heard that the shipping, so the year before this, the shipping went year round, and we had ships going through the winter months, and we were pretty much underway almost every day that winter of 70. That would have been winter of 74. So we were looking forward to having some time in port because in 75 they were talking about shutting down just after the new year that year. So we didn't think we'd have to break ice all winter. As it turns out, we spent most of the winter near Sault Ste. Marie and into the spring of 76 actually would have been. So yeah, so it was interesting. Yeah, the storm was starting to brew. Ships were trying to make landfall on the other side of the lake. I think the Anderson and the Fitzgerald were both within 10 miles of each other as they were trying to make Whitefish Bay on the eastern end of the lake.
Yeah, let's take a look at this. I found this online, so
Sure.
it departed Superior, right?
Right. They actually departed out of the Superior port side of
Yeah.
because Duluth Superior, they're one and the same.
Yeah, pretty
kind
much.
of,
You've got
pretty much.
Duluth, Minnesota, and then just to the east of Duluth and across the state border into Wisconsin, you've got Superior.
Yeah.
And the track, as you can see on this map here,
It took it real close to Isle Royal up there at the top. And, and the reason they did it, they tried to hug the shore to stay out of the main body of the wind and the waves. But once they made that right turn there to make it down towards Whitefish Bay, they really got hit hard, and that was where the brunt of the damage probably was done. Very good. This is a very good painting of the Edmund Fitzgerald is depicted. What it may have looked like on that night as the waves, not very big in this picture, but can you imagine sitting that low in the water and taking 30 footers over your bow? That would have done some damage.
Now let's talk about that, because before we went live, you had mentioned, and I want you to tell the story about what it was like to go full speed across Lake Superior to get there. But before we do that, you had mentioned that some people were saying the waves were at 20 feet. Some people were saying the waves were more. Ultimately, you had to depart Duluth at what time of day?
So it would have been about 11 to 12 midnight, get underway and get out on the lake.
So being that dark, did you even have a feel as to what the waves were like at that point?
Not until we got outside the break wall there. We went under the lift bridge and hit the open water, and that's when it started hitting.
And what were you thinking at that time?
Well, at 21 years old, I was thinking, oh, this is one of the worst storms I can. And, we had just gotten out in it, but yet it felt like it was already rocking and rolling. And our ship was part icebreaker, buoy tender, but we were sort of round bottom. So when we rolled pretty good. So we were taking 35, 38 degree rolls. And I think the maximum we were allowed to take was 38 degrees. And I'm not going to say we went over that because no one ever said, but it was rocking and rolling pretty good. So,
and what was your station on this thing? Where were you?
So I was the storekeeper. The storekeeper was the guy that took care of all the supplies, made sure anybody that needed anything parts wise or anything like that. I was the guy that got that stuff for them. So underway duty station was the stern of the vessel, manning the mooring line in the back. I was actually on the phone system and gave the orders to release the stern lines and stow away all the gear in the back on the stern of the ship. So that was my duty station. And then underway, if we needed parts, I would have to write the messages, and we would send them over the radio to order supplies if we had to. There were no cell phones back then, just radio communications, no GPS. Everything was done on paper. We charted our courses and followed the Loran stations. They were radio stations. They sent us a beacon that we could listen to, and as the beacon got louder, we knew we were getting closer to that station. So.
You had Loran in the 70s?
In the 70s, yeah. There was no GPS.
I thought Loran was an 80s thing.
No, that was they had Loran back when even the Vietnam War. That was how people found their way around the world, actually, through Loran stations, radio stations all over the world. We actually had a Coast Guard station off the coast of Vietnam that helped the Navy and the pilots find their way in bad weather. So.
Okay, so you guys you're getting underway and you're hitting in the rough waves. Connor, are there any questions that the viewers that you want to pull up from the viewers? Anything that struck a chord with you? or even you guys, Shane, John, anything you wanted to throw out to Mike before we
Yeah, I've got a question.
go for it.
So as you're going through into the storm, what are you doing specifically? Are you acting as a lookout?
No,
Are you just trying to hold on to something?
Yeah, just hold on to something.
Okay.
As getting underway in a storm like that, the guys that are the most important are the guys in the engine rooms, guys that are charting the courses up behind the bridge, the radio men, and of course the officer and of the underway officer, and then the guy in the helm. First getting underway, the captain advised us all that if we weren't on duty at the time, that we should get rest, because as soon as we would get to arrive where we were going, we were going to be needed to search the horizon. You know, everybody would have a job to do. We'd be looking for whatever we could find, and obviously searching for the crew of the Fitzgerald if we had to.
But isn't that kind of a ridiculous thing for them to ask you to do? You're in these terrible waves. You just a few moments ago, you told us that you were getting close to or exceeding the pitch limit of the boat. Right. How are you guys supposed to sleep in that?
It's very difficult. I'll be honest with you. I had a little trick that I did, and some of the other guys did this too. We had the old hammocks, so our beds were a canvas with ropes tied up, and that was our bed. So basically, we would tie ourselves into the beds. I mean, I literally had to tie myself into the rack in order to keep from rolling out. Some of the guys didn't do it, and they rolled out frequently. So
have you and at the point, had you ever tried to sleep in conditions like that before?
Not that bad, no, never.
So this is as bad as it.
Yeah, this storm was as bad as it ever. We could, when we were doing regular buoy runs and things like that, or breaking ice, we would always have a place we could go hide. Like take the ship through Kiwani Point there, and visit a few towns in that area where there's a channel that goes through. But we actually went all the way around Kiwani Point and took the brunt of the storm head on the south side of the lake versus what the Edmund Fitzgerald, the Anderson were on the north side. We actually took the storm on head on and came around that point, and it was the worst I had ever seen. So the Kiwani Point is that little jut of land that comes out from the upper Michigan area there, and there's some islands, some shoals there. We had to get around that and then make our way through all that open water into where we believed we were looking for the ship, the Fitzgerald. So,
well, yeah,
sorry,
go ahead, Connor. Yeah.
So this might be bring up that map again, please.
The map? Yeah, you got it. Hold on a second here.
Now, these days when weather really gets that bad, it's not uncommon for captains to actually come into Thunder Bay, which is right north of Isle Royale there, and shelter there. Was that not standard back in those days? Were they just too far away?
No, remember the captains were trying to make this was the end of the year, so they were making either their final run or trying to get another run in under the conditions that were out there. So depending on the owners of the ships, if the captain actually felt it was safe enough, he would make that trip and not pull into Thunder Bay or something like that, because that had been talked about. Why didn't they pull in or at least go to the northern side of Isle Royale? But they thought they could make it in time. I mean, they were going with the winds, but like I said, when they turned into the storm, they were taking the brunt of all that water from the west coming to the east. So,
okay.
I want to remind everybody that's just tuning in, because I see some people that are tuning in now. We are talking to Michael Zronick, who is a Coast Guard veteran, currently in Uniontown, Ohio, but at the time he was based in Duluth, serving aboard the Woodrush, and on November 10th, got a notification while he was watching Monday Night Football, a crawl across the bottom of the screen, that they had to board their ship and go looking for and possibly rescuing survivors of the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald. So that's who we're talking to tonight. And John, you were about to ask a question, weren't you?
Well, to your point earlier, how do you go out in these conditions? I was recently listening to, what's his name, the Deadliest Catch guy, Mike Rowe, the commentary guy,
the Dirtiest Jobs guy.
Yeah, Dirtiest Job guy. And
yeah, but you're right. He's the narrator for Deadliest Catch.
Right.
Yeah.
And he had asked that question to one of the Coast Guard pilots up in, Alaska and whatnot. Like how do you guys go out in these conditions? He said, well, the only thing that really stops us is if the hangar door is frozen and we can't open it. So,
right.
And talking with the Coast Guard veterans at the Slater, I mean, they went out in any condition really. Unless something was broken, they couldn't go out. They were going out.
Sure. We had that saying, you have to go out, but you don't have to come back.
Yeah.
If you've watched the movie The Finest Hour, those gentlemen said the same thing. I mean, that was, that's what we did. That was our job. So
yeah.
We do have a question from my dad. Actually, he says,
"Hey, Rob.
was there any kind of air search and rescue working conditions trying to find the ship?"
So the Navy flew a vessel over Lake Superior using some type of not a radar, but they were looking for anything magnetic. I mean,
they had the MAD, magnetic anomaly detector.
Yes, and I'm not sure if at that point everyone knew that she had sank or whether she was in trouble, but they flew that. Now, Coast Guard has Air Station Traverse City, but the winds were too strong for the helicopters we had at that time. I don't believe we got any of our fixed wing or helicopters underway that evening. I believe we were the only vessel that was able to get out on the lake and actually make way over to that location. So other than the Canadian Coast Guard, obviously.
And they also asked the Arthur Anderson to turn around and to go aid in some rescue as well, right?
That was crazy. And they broadcasted out of Sault Ste. Marie asking any ships if they thought they could get underway and see if they could help search. A lot of those captains just, I mean, you're talking about risking your entire crew and your livelihood, your ship. It's a lot to ask, especially in those conditions. So, and the Anderson did it, but they took some pretty good hits, and they had some damage themselves. So,
now before we get to that, I wanted to tell everybody, because I find this interesting. So this is what they had on board, which is taconite ore, correct?
Correct. Yes. Actually, that was pulled up from the wreck. It wasn't meant to be pulled up. It just happened to be that they were videotaping and taking pictures of the wreck. And on the skids of the underwater the vessel that they were using, some of this got trapped in the skids. So it is now at the museum there in Whitefish Point, the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum. You can see the taconite that happened to be on board that. So
yeah, so this is actual taconite pellets that were on board the Fitzgerald that night, which I find fascinating. Yeah. Okay. So, and before you guys were sent on your way, I wanted to also pull this up because this was the final set of transmissions from radio calls from the Fitzgerald to the Anderson. And basically they're saying, the radars, the Fitzgerald, as I understand it, carried 2 radars. They were knocked out in the storm, and the Anderson was how far behind the Fitzgerald?
It's about 10 miles, I think.
Okay, so quite a distance.
Yeah, quite a distance. But I guess they could see see them on their radar. I don't believe they could see their lights, but I believe they were able to follow closely with the radar. So,
what is the problem that's referenced at the bottom? Is the problem just the weather, or had they reported some issues?
They had lost some of their decking, the rigging on their deck, and they had lost some of their air vents to the storm itself, to the waves. So water was getting inside the ship. At this point, that's what they thought. They didn't know if it was coming in anywhere else, but they knew at least some of the air vents on the deck had been knocked off. And you take a lot of waves, all that water going straight down into the hull. So they had their pumps running to the best of their ability to try to keep up with that. And that's probably why they said that. We are holding our own. Is a reference to the pumps taking care of business. So,
and Ken, I'm sorry, I was reading this when you had mentioned that their radar got knocked out, right?
Well, as I understand it, they had 2 radars, and
well, they were using Arthur M. Anderson got within the 10 miles so they can share a radar, and that's what he's referencing, because there was a ship coming up. And that's why he says, "Oh, there's a ship coming 9 miles from you," or something. Because so they were communicating their radar status.
Yeah, it looks to me like this being less transmissions, the Anderson was kind of acting as the eyes for the Fitzgerald, because it no longer have radar.
And that night, they had one of with this storm being as bad as it was, it actually knocked out the lighthouse there on Whitefish Point. So the Fitzgerald is looking for the light, which should help guide them into the bay there, but the light had been knocked out by the loss of power. The backup generator didn't start, and nobody was manning that station. The Coast Guard at that time had cut back. There were no people on board at station. They had to come all the way from Sault Ste. Marie to get that back online, and the way the storm was and the roads were, there was no way they could get there to put that light back in service. So
the Fitzgerald was looking for a light.
Yep.
that wasn't there.
It wasn't there. Yep.
And it was in the 1975. It was an unmanned lighthouse.
It was an unmanned lighthouse. Yeah, it used to be a lifeboat station. We actually cruised there, and they took care of the light and everything. And then during early I guess late 60s or early 70s, they cut back, and it just became a light all by itself. And the Coast Guard boarded up the rest of the stations. So,
if you're just tuning in, we're talking to Mike Zronick, who was one of the first responders to the site of the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald. And I wanted to ask, okay, so at this particular point, you're getting underway. You were given orders to go, and we had pictures of the Wood Rush. Let's see, the Wood Rush is number 25. Here we go. So you had just returned on Sunday from a mission. Your supplies are depleted. You get the call. You have to refuel. You have to get whatever food you can find. You said you raided the refrigerator in the Coast Guard station. So when you pull away from the dock, you being in charge of the stores, and you see how bad it is, and you know how far you have to go, did you think, oh crap, we don't have any?
No, I didn't think that. I was too busy thinking about the storm we were going into, and not too much about anything. I knew that we probably wouldn't be making any meals or anything like that underway in a storm like that. So I was pretty confident, as long as we had enough fuel to get where we were going, in enough crew, we would be all right. So, but
how full was your gas tank?
We were probably empty when we were able to get a tanker to come in and fuel us. And I'm not quite sure how big those tankers were. I'm going to say 10,000 gallons, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So,
jeez. So, all right. So we've asked you questions. So continue. So you pull out into these waves.
So we pull out, and normal trip under good weather would be 18 to 20 hours. But in that kind of weather, going to Sault Ste. Marie or Whitefish Point, it took us almost 24 hours, 23 hours, something like that, to get to station. And along the way, we're dealing with waves 25, 35 feet. Honestly, I actually went up. I tell the story that we were underway, and typically I could go up to the bridge, ask permission to enter the bridge and just look out, And that night I tried to get up to the bridge in those conditions and asked permission to get on the bridge, and the captain said permission denied, go below. They didn't want us to know how really bad it was out there. So the less people, less crew knew, better off we were. So I went below, tied myself in my rack, and we weathered the storm that night.
But you'd been on this thing for 2.5 years. You said it was as bad as, you had to know it was bad.
It was bad, yeah. And nobody ever talked like that. You had the idea it might be bad, but nobody ever said, hey, this is really bad. We're going to, what's going to happen? No, people just kept that to themselves.
Hey, Michael.
Yeah.
I am a little confused here.
Sure.
I'm looking at a map, Duluth, and then where the Fitzgerald sink. Was there no other Coast Guard stations between Duluth and? There
was. Sault Ste. Marie had a few small boats, and they had I believe it was a 140-foot tug, but I think it was the Cuyahoga. And it was a seagoing tug, but that weather was way too rough for them to get out of Whitefish Point, because where she sank is right where that end of that arrow is where she sank. So you'd have been out in open water, and the waves were running back and forth, bouncing off one shore and coming back. So you were running into waves and the rebounds of the waves and the wind that was pushing you, because we're talking 60, 70, 80 miles an hour winds, waves 35 feet. So it was pretty rough. And you'd make 5-10 feet forward and you get pushed back. You know what I mean? It's kind of like we were at the mercy of the wind and the water, basically. Wow.
So if we can go back for people who are geographically challenged, where is Duluth on this map?
The extreme left-hand side.
Extreme left-hand there.
Okay, so you're following the track of the Fitzgerald.
Yeah, right. So if you look at this map here, the white arrow, the white line is the track of the Fitzgerald.
Right.
But if you look at this map and you look at the extreme left-hand side of the water, which in this map is depicted as gray, you'll then see a black little like crinkly squiggle. That's the Port of Duluth, correct, Mike?
That is correct. Yes.
And that's where the Fitzgerald was loading up these where are they? These taconite pellets. All right.
Correct.
So that's Duluth. Or I should say, I guess technically it was Superior. But anyway, so that's where it started. And then the Edmund Fitzgerald followed this white line track to where the arrowhead, as Mike said, that's called, is that Whitefish Bay?
Whitefish Bay, down there where it says Sault Ste. Marie.
Yeah.
You can see that little jut of land off to the left of the Whitefish Bay. That's where the lighthouse was, and the current museum, the Shipwreck Museum, is now located there. And typically we would have followed, depending on our run, we would probably follow just about the same course if we were just doing a buoy run. But in this particular case, we hugged the southern shore, went around the islands there, which are the Apostle Islands, just above where it says Captain took northerly route. So right there, all those islands, we went around those, and then we tried to hug the southern shore all the way around Kewanee Point there. Which is that land that juts out, and then we headed straight across that big open area of water. It was where we probably had the worst of all the weather that we could possibly have. That's where the waves were the biggest.
And you're basically going full speed, correct?
Yeah, full steam for us was about 15 miles per hour, thereabouts. And it took us a while to get there. So about 23, 24 hours to get to where we believe she had sunk. And we started looking for debris. We had lookouts outside with binoculars looking. We were able to find some flotsam life jackets. There's a picture of one of them. A couple of the lifeboats. These guys would have been in Sault Ste. Marie, and this would have been some of the gear we would have offloaded after we got back in.
So this would have been stuff you collected.
Yeah, stuff we would have collected along with the Canadian Coast Guard. We would have found these in the water. We pulled one of the lifeboats up on board our ship, and the Canadian Coast Guard pulled one of the other ones. I believe this is the one we pulled up. And the interesting thing, if you look at the bow of this, this thing was ripped almost in half. And it's got a big hole there in the front of it. They were tied up. That is metal, yeah. And
Wow.
they would have been ripped off as the boat was sinking. So it was so brutal that the force of this sinking that it ripped the lifeboats right off of the Edmund Fitzgerald, and they floated up. So
wait a second. You're saying that they were ripped off. Is there no question then as to whether or not anyone made it out into a lifeboat? I mean, you're basically saying the damage on. Let me pull that picture up. You're basically saying the damage on these lifeboats indicated that they were still fastened.
Right. They'd never been offloaded, and nobody ever got in them. So
interesting.
So when in finding this, we kind of had that idea that we weren't going to find somebody alive at this point. So
this is the evidence that you guys, I mean, because your experience, like you said, you'd been there 2.5 years and everything, but you're saying it's like, oh yeah, look at this boat. These would have been where oh man, this is so fascinating. So where the crack is kind of relates to an attachment where it
would have been attached at the point. Yeah. And the stern, if you can look at the back of this picture, you can see where the stern is also ripped off. You can see a big opening in the stern of this lifeboat where it got ripped off from the stern also. Now this is in this day and age, they would have had wetsuits to wear, but they would have had nothing like what a lot of people will have now. They have survival suits now. And you stand a much better chance of surviving in cold water for at least a few hours. Now, if these guys would have gotten in the water that night, knowing how cold it was in wetsuits, we would have been probably just picking up bodies for recovering bodies at that point. I mean,
so is there a believed time that she sank? Did she sink before you guys even left Duluth?
She sank before we left. They believe somewhere. So the last communication was slightly before 7:10. They believe she sank somewhere around 7:10 or thereabouts. No one actually knows. But the Anderson noticed that she wasn't on the radar anymore, and I think they noted that time.
You're right. That was 7:10 p.m. that the Anderson called the Fitzgerald,
and she didn't answer.
Yeah, I think the last thing they heard was the Fitzgerald said, "We're holding our own."
Yeah, and that was it. So.
And that was it. There was you had mentioned another lifeboat had been recovered, and I found a picture. But you said the Canadian Coast Guard recovered another lifeboat,
right? And I think they're both now in Sault Ste. Marie. One of them is on the Valley Camp.
Yeah,
and I'm not sure where the other one is, to be honest.
I've actually seen if you go to the one with the rips we were talking about.
Bear with me a second here. I think.
Yeah, that one. I've actually seen that one in person. It's at the Valley Camp in Sault Ste. Marie. I think they might have the second one. I'm not sure if they have both. Or
so I'm just fascinated by the point you made. With the damage you see at the lifeboat. So if the Canadians grab this one, and this one looks definitely more intact than the other, and you see at the whoops, sorry, you see at the bow. that attachment point, that's what
Yep.
was ripped away
from the other one. Yep, absolutely.
Mm.
You know what? I don't need to hear anymore. I'm glad we had Jan. It's been fun. You know, that to me is fascinating. I didn't realize that that's what these photos could tell us. What other
So
questions?
you arrive at
Yeah.
say 11:30 at night. You know, a full 27 hours after.
Yeah, something like
they'd already
that.
gone down.
And we start searching. We have our searchlights. Now,
Now by this time,
still the storm going on.
Oh,
So we're
okay.
still rocking and rolling here.
okay.
It was probably heavy seas for at least 2 more days after that.
Oh.
And I think we pulled in after about a week of just going back and forth across, searching the grid, looking for anything we possibly could find. And we pull up as much debris as we possibly could from the ship, and then pull into Sault Ste. Marie to offload, pick up supplies. And at that point, we started our investigation into why did she sink at that point. So we went from rescue and search and rescue and recovery to we're going to figure out why she sank. And at that, we loaded up. I believe we had a side scan sonar the Navy lent us. So we went back out with this sonar, and the Navy guys instructed us on how to utilize, how to run this thing. And we were able to pull this sonar, which is like an underwater fish that bounces sound waves off the bottom. And we were able to draw pictures of the bottom of Lake Superior where the ship went down. And we were able to get a pretty good accurate fix on where she was.
The one thing and you had mentioned aircraft flying overhead with the magnetic anomaly detector.
Correct.
You guys were able to figure out pretty quickly where the ship was.
We had a good idea, yes. Now remember, this is a fairly big lake, and in not knowing how deep it was there and all that, we ascertained, and we towing the device behind us. We spent probably a good 10, 15 days doing that. And that all led into the next mission that would have been, which is we took the Curve 3, which I think you have a picture of. And the Curve 3 was launched off of our vessel in the May of 76.
Oh, wait, hold on a second. I know what pictures you're talking about. That would have been number 41. Hold on a second. So you're talking about this guy.
Yeah, that guy. That's Curve 3. That's our chief bosun mate on the left there is giving the signal to lower it. So basically, we anchored over the top of the Edmund Fitzgerald with 3 anchors. And we were able to use our winches to move our ship back and forth over the top of the wreck. And this Curve 3 was lowered to the bottom and capable of doing videotape and pictures of the wreck. So they were able to photograph the wreck and take video and document everything as far as how the wreck lays at the bottom, the damage done to the wreck, and try to figure out why did she sink? What caused this to happen? And as you probably all know, the Coast Guard came out with its findings, and there were 3 ideas on why she may have sank, but no definitive cause was reached. Of course, the stern is upside down. Most of the crew would have been in the stern of the ship, and they would have never been able to get out based on what the stern is upside down. There's no exit for them. Probably no, because when the ship tore in half, the taconite, of course, was released. You can see there's no in this picture here. Given how it looks, there's no exit, no doors, nothing they could have gotten out of to reach the surface or during the sinking,
Oh,
we're not quite sure.
You're saying what if they were trapped inside and they went down and they landed on the bottom of Lake Superior? There's no, you're right. There's nothing.
There's no way to get out. So whatever happened very fast, and unfortunately they were trapped. Now in the bow, you would have had the captain, either the first mate or somebody on the helm, and perhaps one other guy up front, like maybe the first mate or something like that. They would have been up front, so if anybody would have been able to make it out, would have been one of those three, maybe four. But as we know, nobody made it out, and they're all entombed in the vessel itself. So,
isn't there one rumor or something where a body was actually found by the bow with a life jacket on?
In respect to the family, there were a few people that dove on the Fitzgerald. They were diving illegally. I believe it was in the 90s. They weren't given permission, and supposedly they photographed a body on the bottom of Lake Superior. And as far as we know, those pictures were destroyed or confiscated or whatever, and the body was left where it was because that's only fitting. It's a grave site. It's that should not be disturbed. So. So in memory, in recognition of the family, I'm always very careful on talking about that kind of stuff. But because I really feel for that families of the crew of the Fitzgerald. Yeah. But as far as I know, no pictures have been released, and no bodies have been seen other than perhaps that one time. Yeah.
Now, another thing that I find interesting about this is that the Fitzgerald was how long?
She was 729 feet long. Had a crew of 29, which I always found as a coincidence. Crew of 29. She's 729 feet. She's actually in 530 feet of water, but you could sort of stretch it and say 529. Kind of coincidence, I think. But yeah, if you were to stand the Edmund Fitzgerald up on end, she would stick out of the water by a couple hundred feet, right? So
well, and that's kind of what I find interesting is like, okay, so if the ship did not break apart on the surface, but yet the one theory, the hatches weren't dogged down, it took on water, and then it started to sink either by the stern or the front, it would reach the bottom before one end would reach the bottom before the other end would. Obviously, the other end could still be on the surface of the water. And it doesn't make sense if the one theory, is that the hatches weren't dogged down and it took on water. You look at the images here, or how you guys found it with that side scan sonar. You're just like, well, no, it broke in half.
Some of the hatches are actually ripped off, and the photographs of the dogs are the devices that were used to dog down each of the hatches. They're ripped apart. Some of them are not. And so, water could have been getting in through the hatches, but that probably wasn't the reason she sank. Not totally. It added to the weight, obviously, because water was getting in. But you have to imagine that something else, either a very violent wave hit the front of the ship and forced the bow down. Now, that would have raised the stern up slightly and could have forced the ship to crack. Or, the three theories are she hit bottom somewhere along the line, along the islands, and created a hole in the bottom. That in itself would have caused water to get in, but maybe did not break it in half. The weight of the water and the waves could have forced it to, or she could have gone bow down in a big wave, forcing the stern to come up out of the water, and the weight of the stern then broke off, sort of like the Titanic did, and break in half and then sink pretty fast. But you can see the bow, and this is, of course, is a drawing, but the pictures and some of the video of the bow, she was pretty heavily damaged. She hit the bottom of the lake going at a fairly high rate of speed. So it was pretty violent. So
well, yeah, I kind of think maybe the bow down, she was listing a little bit, and if she's taking on water in her midsection there, like, and you're riding waves like that for hours,
Right.
And you're just seeing the wall of water, then you're going up and going down into the crest and the trough, and then all of a sudden you go down and you just don't come back up,
right?
Because of the weight. And
there's a lot of videotape, a YouTube video out there that you can see some of these ships, and I think there's even one of the Fitzgerald where it shows them riding the waves, and the stern would be having a wave and the bow would be having a wave at the same time, and you sort of get that trough in between.
Yeah,
I mean, I could see that happening. I mean, that's a possibility.
So where the middle section is out of water.
Where it's out of water and it's not being supported, and the weight of the ship is, it could crack like an egg. Who knows? I mean, Coast Guard finally said they had 3 theories, and they couldn't prove either theory to 100% certainty. So,
do me a favor and let's back up a little bit. So when Shane pointed out, doing the math, you get there at about 11:30 at night.
Correct.
You personally, how do you know you're there? Do they make an announcement and say, all right, guys, we're here, keep a lookout? I mean, what happens at that point?
Yeah, the crew gets notified by the chiefs that we're going to start standing watches. People are assigned a particular station. They have to go out, and they're wearing life jackets. We're outside trying to look for any kind of debris. We have searchlights out on the water, trying to see if we can spot anything. It's fairly, I guess it would say almost normal for us. So we'd take up our stations. Not everybody would have the first watch. Guys on the left, port side, starboard side, some off the bridge would be looking and searching and trying to see anything we could possibly see. And then the rest of the crew is doing their normal, whatever their normal thing is at that point in time. And then we would swap out crews. Probably would, if I had to really think about it, probably we stood about a 2-hour watch. Then we were relieved to come inside, get warm back up, because it was pretty cold. Obviously, if you're getting wet, you're going to even be colder. So we're out there searching, and then come in and take a break. And those other guys will replace us as we go. So,
I mean, it seemed as though if you go back to the photo of some of the life rings, I think it was the life rings.
Oh yeah, hold on.
There's definitely like oil. Like,
So
there could have been an oil slick or something.
There was some oil slick on surface from the tanks off the Fitzgerald. So there was. So we had a good idea. I mean, during the daytime we could see it. Obviously, at night the water's pitch black anyway out there. So it's really hard to see anything. And something pops out of the water, you get an idea for you. You can see it for a brief second. And then the wave takes it, and, you can't see it for a little bit. So you're constantly searching for whatever it is you might be able to see. So, so there's a couple of life rings that would have come off the main deck somewhere and floated to the surface, got caught up in the oil slick from the ship itself.
So when you arrive on station, like you said, it's really hard to sleep. I mean, were you tired? Were you hungry?
Oh,
had you guys eaten anything?
No, we had, the cooks couldn't cook really, to be honest with you. That first day was really rough. And I don't believe we were serving at all. There was coffee and there was other things to drink, but I don't believe we served any food. It was too rough. As you can imagine, you're in seas like that, 25, 30-foot seas. Even the day after, we're still taking seas 20 to 25 foot. And for a couple more days, until we get down to a more manageable 10, 15 feet. It wasn't normal. It was just hectic. Crazy.
I don't know. I used to race 42-foot sailboats on Lake Erie, and if we hadn't eaten, we were sick. I mean, no food in your stomach, and you're talking about,
crackers. We had crackers probably.
That's
things
not
like
enough.
that.
That's not enough.
Knowing the galley and knowing what it had been like, it would have been hard. I mean, we had things pretty well secured, but I don't know how they would have been able to serve food in that weather. So
I saw Jolie made a comment here that her friend's brother was a cook on the Fitzgerald, and that's interesting.
Yeah, she said. So I wrote her and said, please share this video with your friend, and she says he also attends the reunions. So maybe especially with the 50th anniversary,
right, coming up,
and I'm sure you can find the cook's name in the 29.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I had that the one sheet that and I don't think I actually pulled it out. I had the cook's name if I had to look it up real quick if you wanted me to, but the whole thing about the ship and how she met her end, and why is it as even to this day, 50 years later, people talk about the Edmund Fitzgerald, and we owe all that really to Gordon Lightfoot, because you don't ever talk about the Bradley, which sank in the 50s, and the other ship, the Morrill, I believe it was the Morrill, sank in the 50s, and the Bradley sank in the 60s. You don't really talk about those vessels like they do the Edmund Fitzgerald, and it really was because of his song and his presentation, and it became folklore, I guess, as you say. I always mention that the families, I do feel bad for the families. It took me so many years to even attend one of the memorials because I felt bad that we tried but didn't succeed in rescuing anybody. I mean, we didn't know at the time that we couldn't, but that kind of weighed heavy on us. So,
well, that brings up an interesting point. So it went down in 75. When did Lightfoot's song come out? Was it 78?
So from the story I actually heard, they were working on an album back then. And the name of it escapes me, but he had the album almost done when he started fooling around with this set of music, and then writing the lyrics. The lyrics actually came out of either it was a Newsweek or a Time magazine story that they had written on the Edmund Fitzgerald, because the Fitzgerald was really a footnote on the CBS News the first night it got into trouble, and the second night, and then after that they stopped talking really about it. And then he wrote that song based on that article and pulled most of the words of that song out of that article. So, and I know that story because of a gentleman that actually told it at one of the memorials, that he was a friend of Gordon Lightfoot's. He actually still shows up every year on the memorial and plays the song "Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald" for the memorial. And the Whisperers of the North, I believe, is the name of this group. They are a Gordon Lightfoot tribute band, and they pretty interesting story if you ever get a chance to hear him tell that story about how Gordon wrote this and what he was like to know him. So.
Well, what did you think when the song came out?
Oh, it was popular, and it made that album that he was working on. That was actually the lead song on that album that he wrote, and it wasn't a very short song either. It was longer than most. So, and it was kind of sad to me, at least. It was. I'm not sure how the rest of my crew looked at it, but. It just reminds you that night that what you went through and what those poor families went through, not knowing.
Also, the Fitzgerald was the largest. She was like the queen of the Great Lakes. She was the largest.
She was.
So she had that Titanic mystique, maybe of unsinkable.
Absolutely. She was right Queen of the Lakes at that point. Now they're 1,000-footers.
Right.
Yeah.
And she was a 729 foot. So,
I don't know if we still have Chopper 73 watching. I think he's out of Australia. I thought I saw David. He's also out of Australia. I'd be curious to find out, as popular or as big of a deal as the Edmund Fitzgerald is to the U.S. I'm wondering, you guys in Australia, had you ever, or anyone in any other country besides Canada and the United States, had you guys ever heard of the Fitzgerald? Throw a comment in below. I'd be curious to hear what the.
Well,
I think Dave had to go. He had to go to lunch because
Yeah,
they're
had to
24
lunch.
hours or whatever.
Okay.
But
Okay.
Chopper hopefully is still here.
But I can speak for myself, having been tour guide on a museum ship on the Great Lakes for 5 years.
Yeah.
Every time I had foreigners who are not from America or the United States, the Fitzgerald is generally the only thing they knew about the Great
Oh,
Lakes.
really? Okay.
Yes. Like that's very often that's the only thing they knew. And one thing I'd always get them kind of laughing is I would tell them like, "Oh, you know the Anderson's still in service, right?" And their brains would explode after that because that'd be like 50 years earlier. But yeah, so no, that's often the only thing they do know. So I'm not sure if they have the same mystique for the Fitz that the Fitz has, but they've definitely heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, Michael, is your vessel still around?
She exists. She now is a Coast Guard vessel for the country of Ghana. So that's a picture of her currently.
Wow.
Still sailing. Of course, she was built in 1944. She was one of the last 180s built. And that was there. You see a picture of her before they actually put the racing stripes. I believe the white and the racing stripes came in the late 60s, early 70s. There's a picture of her when I was on her. So,
is that what Coast Guard veterans call that? The racing stripes?
Yeah, the racing stripes.
Really?
Yeah, the racing stripes.
It makes you go faster.
Yeah. But if you wanted to see one like her, the Sundew is still in Duluth, Minnesota, and she is she goes out and does harbor tours and things like that. She's privately owned, but she still has the racing stripe on her.
Yeah.
So
I've been on Sundew, and actually Acacia is also still kicking around.
Oh, yes, the Acacia on Lake Michigan, yes.
Yeah.
So two left.
At least here.
Yeah, at least here. Yeah, the rest are either gone or have been decommissioned and
sold
who
off.
knows? Yeah, sold off. So
I know there's one in Estonia because they have it at their maritime museum. Believe it or not.
Okay.
Yeah, they completely rebuilt the superstructure on it, but you can tell the hull's the same.
Right.
When you look at the pictures of the debris that was pulled up, and you're at the side rail looking for your particular shift, did you yourself find anything?
Most of the things, like the life jackets, things like that, we would point out. So yes, I was able to see a life jacket. It was hard not to see the lifeboat. I mean, we all saw it. It was fairly prominent on the horizon when we were going around. So in pulling that on board, that was a little more difficult because of the damage that was done to her. Hard to get a good line on her to get her back on board and pull her up with our crane. So, but yeah, we every one of us saw something in the water that if we were standing watch, debris was here and there, so.
And I imagine, or actually, what thoughts did you have going through your head if you were going to spot a body? Is that something you were afraid of? Is that something that was routine for you? Probably. I don't know.
I don't know about routine. I mean, I had done other recoveries when I was stationed. I was at a small boat station for a short period of time. And in the spring, after the ice all melted, we would always have a few recoveries for one reason or another. But I hadn't really thought about it much. I was 21 at the time the Fitzgerald sank. So probably about the only thing I would have thought about is if we weren't going to find someone alive, we could at least find someone to bring them back home to their loved ones so they would have closure, So But unfortunately, we never found a single body. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
What other questions you guys have for Michael? If you guys are just tuning in, we're talking to Mike Zonik, who was one of the first responders at the coordinates of the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald. And
what was it like after? Right. I mean, you're out. I don't know how many days. I don't know if we've covered that, but then you pull back into Duluth. What's the exhaustion level?
Shane, that's a good question. That's a good question. What was it like when you finally returned to base?
So for the first 6 months, we were really underway and hadn't seen Duluth for a while. It wasn't until after May of 76 when we did that underwater curve with all the pictures and everything that we were able to get back into Duluth and our home port. So it was a while. Families would come over to the Sioux. We would be able to come in once in a while and get supplies like that. And you could see your family for short periods of time. I had no family up in Minnesota or Sault Ste. Marie. My family was the guys on board ship with me. Here in this picture, in fact, we had our reunion this past year, and a lot of these guys we met up for the first time and saw each other for first time in 49 years. So that's a long time to go without seeing each other. But we had a great time and able to reminisce about all the stuff that we did. And
so you were in Lake Superior. You were at station for months.
So what we would do is we would go out for a week at a time, search, do what we needed to do. If it was the underwater camera thing, that was a whole 10 days. We were anchored over the vessel, over the Edmund Fitzgerald, and then
10 days,
and then come back into port, tie up, resupply, see our families, things like that. So we were in and out probably every 10 days to 2 weeks. A lot of these pictures are from the underwater video or footage that was taken. That's the Curve 3 going in the water or being pulled back on board. So, and we were anchored directly over the ship at this point. So,
to Shane's question, which I think is always really interesting. You're in the middle of this. You're anchored over the ship forever. You're looking for survivors. You couldn't find any. You're pulling up this debris. So was it kind of, when you do make it back to Duluth or any port, really, is it kind of almost anticlimactic?
I guess most of the guys would head off to the local pub and get a couple of brews or something to try to take your mind off of what you had been doing and what the mood was like, because it was kind of somber, really, to be honest with you. We knew what it all meant, and a lot of us being as young as we were. I mean, our captain was only in his late 30s, early 40s, Captain Hobo. I think I might have included a picture of him on the bridge. He had the big handlebar mustache. And,
you did. Hold on a second.
Yeah, he's since passed away, unfortunately. He was a captain in the U.S. Coast Guard for many, many years, and actually was stationed at Sault Ste. Marie. That's him right there.
And what was his name?
Captain Jimmy Hobaugh. And he was our captain of the Woodrush. And later on in his career, he was also captain at Sault Ste. Marie at the Sault Ste. Marie base there. And that's where he retired before he passed away. So he was a good guy to serve under. He was strict, but he was all about the crew and our well-being and making sure we had what we need to do our job. So
when you said, I think you had said something to the effect of he didn't want anyone up on deck or in the wheelhouse. Was it like, hey, guys, can you just go down below? We don't want anyone up here. Or was get your goddamn butts below?
The night I tried to get permission, I could tell by the tone of his voice that it was go below and don't say a word to anyone about what you saw. The only person that got to go up to the bridge would be one of the guys that I was a close friend with. Tony Hall was his name, and he was a seaman on board the ship, and he would be bringing coffee to the captain and to the guys up on the bridge. But other than that, nobody went up on the bridge unless you were asked to go to the bridge. So, and like I said, the only reason I used to like to go up on the bridge is I would volunteer once in a while to do to handle the helm, because really underway a lot of times my job was kind of boring. And volunteering to go up on the bridge, give a guy a break, was kind of a change of pace for me. So, but that night it was so bad that I understood where he was coming from. He didn't want any distractions on the bridge, and they were concentrating on trying to keep us safe. So,
Gregory asked the question: how large was the Wood Rush?
She was 180 foot, a single screw, round bottomed buoy tender. We also had an ice cutting bow on that we could cut ice in the wintertime. So
let me pull up another let me pull up a picture. Just a and
Yep.
then Connor, there was another question. Oh yeah. That just popped up. I thought this was what's that?
Where's the picture?
Hold on a second.
this
No, the question. Did you get to watch any video feed or any kind of, I forget what you called that device that you guys put over the side?
The Curve 3. Yeah, we all stood
Sonar.
watch.
That was a sonar device.
Oh,
correct?
the side scanning sonar. The yeoman and I and probably a couple other guys like radiomen manned that sonar, and it was a giant. It's hard to describe what it was like, but it would draw a picture on a piece of paper as you were going over an area. So it would draw a very good detail what the bottom looked like based off of the sound waves bouncing off the bottom. So we got a fairly good idea that the ship was broke in half and the bow was upright because you could see the details of the bow, and the stern was propeller up. And, all that became very clear to us that we could see how she was and what it kind of looked like.
That had to take your breath away.
Yes, absolutely. And like I say, that was that gave us the best clear look at the time until all the other gear could be brought, up to Duluth there to help us search a little bit more detail. I think at the time we were just surveying the area to get a good idea where all the debris was in the debris field. So.
When you hear stories of, Pearl Harbor, the attack on Pearl Harbor, the guy, a lot of sailors didn't want to stand watch because they could hear sailors trapped inside the ships banging on the hull. Was there any talk or any, hey, I don't know if you had you probably didn't have sonar on the Wood Rush, I guess. So there's no way you could have heard if there was someone trapped. Was there any talk of, hey, we should listen?
Yeah, no, we didn't have the devices that would be associated with looking for something under the water. Had it been wartime, maybe the Wood Rush would have been outfitted with something like that for looking for submarines or something.
Okay.
But, our ship really wasn't involved in any of that. And, she was only built in 44. The war was over in 45. So she spent most of her time on the Great Lakes. And then the last 10 years of her career or so up in Alaska. So
before I let you go, Michael Zronic, a Coast Guard veteran, Shane, John, Connor, any other questions that we want to put to Michael?
Yeah, more directed to yourself. What do you have planned this year for the 50th? You're obviously very involved with everything around the Fits. Do you have any special events you're planning to do this year with the 50th? Are you planning to attend anything?
I plan on attending. I've been in contact with Bruce Lynn, who is the director of the museum, and I think they're going to go out and do something a little bit larger this year. Typically, our memorial services are really family friends, close friends, and he's allowed both myself and a few other coasties to come. I think this year they're going to allow more outside visitors to come up there for the memorial. I know November is not a great time of the year, but there might be something they might do like a large tent or something like that. It just depends on the weather, and you can never predict in November what it's going to be like. So, but they, being the 50th, they're going to do something much bigger and much more elaborate, I'm sure, for the families and for people to just get to know what about the Fitzgerald. So,
there is another question here.
Go for it.
How did the Fitz affect safety rules on for lake shipping?
That's a really good question. Actually, the sinking of the Fitz has changed the way the Coast Guard looks at safety on not only the Great Lakes but around shipping all around our country and maybe even all over the world. There are survival suits now that they have on board. If you ever watched the Deadliest Catch, they have survival suits now, which they didn't have back in the day of the Edmund Fitzgerald sinking. Those types of things. There's a lot more activity around safety and doing drills and things like that than there might have been in the 60s and 70s back when the Fitzgerald was sailing. So it has affected quite a bit as far as safety and what it's like to be sailing on the Great Lakes.
You know, when you talk about safety and you look at this picture here, these tank-like devices that are on deck, aren't those actually canisters that would hide or store inflatable rafts?
Yes, absolutely. That would have been one of those that when it hit the water, it would have opened up and it would have inflated and turned into a survival, like a tent, a survival life raft.
Okay.
Lots of ships have those now where they'll float up. And if you manage to get in the water and you can get into one of these, your survival rates go way up. Yes, absolutely.
We do have another question here.
Yeah.
Do you think the fact that an ore freighter hasn't sunk or been lost on the lake since the Fitz is a testament to the improved technology or just luck?
That's a good question. I think it's improved technology. I think safety factor plays an important role now. I think they look at safety a little bit more seriously. And it may be also that, really Great Lakes shipping isn't quite what it used to be as far as how many ships are sailing. There are a lot of salts that come on into the Great Lakes, but they're only sailing during the summer times. And the ships are so big and so massive now that they don't need as many small ships to do the same amount of work as those 1,000 footers, so. That's a good question, though.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can say, because we brought it up earlier, these days it's just very common when a big storm comes up on Lake Superior to see at least 2 or 3 American Lakers all hide up in Thunder Bay for the day or two it takes. It's
Absolutely.
not uncommon now.
Yeah. I mean, we're so much better at predicting storms now. I mean, even back then they predicted it, but you have no idea. Not like today's technology. They can predict it. They can predict the storm, the weather, the temperatures, almost down to the degrees and the wave heights. So yeah, we're much better today at keeping safe and keeping these sailors safer on the Great Lakes and on the oceans too. So,
Unfortunately, progress is sometimes or many times made with tragedy, right?
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah. When you do presentations to groups or you come on a video podcast like ours, tonight, what's the one question you don't want to get?
I don't answer a lot of questions about the crew because I really never knew any of the crew. I have met the families, and I truly respect them and everything. They live this every day since the day she sank. So, gosh, my heart always goes out to them every time I see them, and they recognize me, and I recognize them. I always give them my best, and always tell them I'm thinking about them, and of course their family members. So those are the questions I have trouble with, but I thoroughly enjoyed sailing the Great Lakes and serving in the U.S. Coast Guard. I spent 21 years active, both reserve, active duty, and inactive reserve. I spent another 6 years. So I spent almost 29 years, and I retired from the U.S. Coast Guard, started doing a lot of different things. I had a lot to do also with cleaning up Great Lakes in general, because I also worked a number of years working for the city of Solon in their wastewater treatment and trying to clean up all the Great Lakes. Because, back in the 70s, a lot of the lakes, they were just dumping pollution straight into the lakes, right? Even in Lake Superior, which takes 200 and some years to overturn. What I mean by that is you drop a water and it takes that long to go through the lake. Lake Erie is like 30 years. So we've been able to change the way people look at the water and the lakes, and Lake Erie now is a walleye capital of the world. I mean, people come all over the country to go fishing for walleye. So the lakes are much cleaner, much safer, and I had a lot to do with that. So I had quite an interesting life.
Were you involved in the zebra mussel battle?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Not so much from my side of it, but Coast Guard side of it. I mean, we when I was in the reserves, there was always talk about monitoring and boarding ships and checking out. So most of those came through with the sailing ships that come from outside, the salts, as we called them, and they'd empty their ballast water into the Great Lakes, and anything in their ballast water would be, that's where they would come from. And it's crazy to think. A lot of those mussels now have cleaned up the water, but they've also caused their own issues. In a lot of the intakes for all the water plants along all the Great Lakes, they have to be cleaned out now because of the mussels growing on the pipes, and they do that every now and then. So yeah,
I know this is not part of our conversation with this, but excuse me, that's a growing concern of mine with we're taking our 2 vessels to dry dock. So all the zebra mussels, there's just coated in zebra mussels. We're going to scrape them off, repaint, and I don't want to see in 2 years them coated in zebra mussels again. So I'm trying to figure out in some way best I can is to try to talk to a marine biologist or something to say we're going to, because I mean, there's just hundreds and thousands of pounds of zebra mussels on them right now.
Absolutely. Right.
So how the hell do we keep them off once we get them scraped off, the hull's nice and clean?
We used to use a paint called red lead, and lead obviously is a bad thing, but it in the day, it was what kept most of the growth off the bottom of our hulls. But there's got to be something out there. I'm sure there's. I'm not going to say one brand over the other, but I'm sure that there's paint manufacturers that manufacture something that could take care of that issue and at least slow the process down. You're never going to eliminate them because they're there, and once they're there, you can only control them a little bit. But there's got to be something on the market that you can get to put on the bottom. So check. Sherwin-Williams is big into that kind of thing, and other paint manufacturers like that. A little plug for Sherwin-Williams here in Cleveland. So, but so you should be able to find something that will help detour that. So,
yeah, I don't know if you're aware. Yeah, Mike, but Shane's with the Buffalo Naval Park, and they've got the World War II submarine, the Croaker, in the foreground, and then the destroyer in the background, the USS the Sullivan's going into dry dock soon. So.
You guys have that. Yeah,
zebra mussels.
All right, absolutely. I remember reading the.
What's that?
John had it. John was going to say something.
Okay. When was this picture taken?
Which picture?
The one you just had up of the buffalo.
I don't know. I don't know where. I don't know.
Yesterday.
Look at that look at that gangway in the center of the screen.
Yeah,
It's near vertical.
Wow.
Yeah, that's leading from the Little Rock to that's normal.
Yeah, that's normal.
The water level's that high right now?
No, the water level's low right now. Again, you can see very quickly. You can see the pier wall. You can see that bleached out area on the left. All right, so we're way down now, and especially because all of the waters in our area is turning into ice, so that shrinks the water level even more because it gets.
It's a staircase, John. It's not a normal gangway.
Oh, it's a staircase.
Oh, it is? Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. I thought it was a gang. I'm with John. I thought it was a gangway.
I was like, how
yeah.
you sliding down that? Okay.
Oh, I see. It's a stair.
Wait,
okay.
you work there. You don't know this?
Huh?
Anyway.
Who are you? What?
All right.
I misheard his question. Yeah, it's not a gang, it's not a ramp. No, it's a stair.
Yeah, it's a ladder.
Probably because I work there, I never think about it anymore. Yeah.
If there isn't any other questions, I just want to say, Mike, thanks for your time.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, we've had you on for an hour and a half, and
People have really enjoyed it, though. So
it's been interesting to to hear your thoughts,
Sure.
not only on the Edmund Fitzgerald, but the when you had to go and make the trip to look for any survivors. I mean, that had to be, I don't know, maybe at 21 years old, was that an adventure, or was
Yeah, it definitely was an adventure. That back in those days, as I said before, you had no cell phone, no nothing like that. All you knew was anything you might experience, and for me, I hadn't experienced much. This was an adventure for me, yes.
And I know Connor asked the question, but at this particular point, is there anything? Do you have any other upcoming presentations you're going to be making at the moment, or is that all going to be coming up in November?
No, I have nothing right now. I usually people like yourselves just call and ask, and I graciously go and do whatever. I've been to a few now. I've done Bainbridge, Solon, and Medina, and I've also done a couple talks up at the museum. So I'm actually looking forward to November of this year with the 50th anniversary, and hopefully that turns out nice. And 50 years, long time. So
we've got a lot of people that tune in from museums. If they wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best way to get in touch with Michael Zronik?
My AOL account, M Zronik, Zronek. So it's MZRONEK at AOL.com. I guess I can give out my phone number.
Your email's
I'm
fine.
probably crazy, but maybe I'll refrain on that. But yeah, mzronik at AOL.com will get you to my inbox, and I'll answer anybody that puts in a request. So
yeah, although I am more than willing to give out Shane's cell phone number right now. But we appreciate you having you on tonight.
Absolutely, and
you're real generous with your time.
Absolutely. There's a couple of books out recently. Also, there was one I think it was out this summer that has a couple of pages where the gentleman did an interview of myself, and so there's a lot of books on the Edmund Fitzgerald. If anybody is interested in it, I definitely suggest they go out and look to their local library or check out Amazon, and there's a lot of good stories out there. So,
gotcha.
Gotcha.
Well, thanks for joining us tonight. We will let you go so we can talk behind
thank
your
you.
back. What's that?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you were fantastic, and we appreciate you coming on. And
absolutely. If you ever want me again, just give me a holler.
What are you doing tomorrow? All right, Mike. You have a good evening, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Nice meeting all of you.
Yeah.
You as well. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Wow. What'd you think of that guy?
I mean, it's very rare to have a primary source for things like this. Someone that was on the ground kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's things that only he would know that we, me being 2 years old and Ken, you being 15 years old at the time of the sinking, and
15? What? No, I was 5.
I wanted to see if he'd catch that.
I was 5.
Okay.
What's interesting
Yeah,
is there was a picture. Damn it, I forgot to ask him. You know what? Hold on a second. He's still here.
Oh yeah, he is.
Yeah. All right. You're back. What?
I'm back.
You had sent me this picture.
Yeah, this 3 of our crew members, and we're posing in front of a ship as we're breaking ice. I could tell a very bad story about one of these.
Go ahead.
We routinely did this. This was the year we broke ice all year long, and every now and then we get real close to the bows of these Great Lakes freighters, and as in this one, I took a picture of the three of my crewmates. I think I'm trying to remember. One of them was named Garcia. One was named Elliot, and I think that's my ex-roommate Craig in this picture. So we were close-knit and we had fun, and so this was probably one of the days where we were kind of bored, and what we were doing is just breaking ice, but let me tell you a story real quick. I don't know if this is a good story to tell, but we were breaking ice one year in the Mackinac. I'm sure all of you know about the Mackinac, the Mighty Mac that is now is a museum ship, and as we were passing by the Mighty Mac, we gave a salute to the captain and the crew of the Mighty Mac. It was not a good thing to do. What the guys did was sort of gave the I can't even say what it is, to be honest with you. But
what you gave him the finger?
They gave him the moon. Let's put it that way. And the captain of the Mackinac called our captain up and said, "We're going to meet when we get into port, and I want those sailors' names." And
that's nice.
We got into trouble for that one, but if you can have a little fun once in a while.
I'll just say this: that is not the first story I've heard of a Coast Guard ship making fun of the Mackinac. I've heard of other ones.
Yeah, I'm sure there are. Sailors.
Them and the West Wind apparently had a real rivalry.
I bet they did.
So what's it like when you're breaking ice for these freighters and these things are right behind you? I mean, they're huge. What is that like when the bow is like bearing down on you?
It's it's intense, let me tell you, because you're trying to take the pressure off of their hulls by running up and down alongside of, and then we cut across their bow, and then we go up the other side. So it's intense, to say the least. Yeah.
I mean, are they trapped in ice at the time?
They are. If they're making any headway, it's just a little bit and a little bit, and as we free up the ice, then they can move a little bit, and then we just keep going, making circles around them, and sometimes we team up with other ships, like with the Mac or with the Sundew, and we would try to break free. Like in this picture, you see 2 of us, the Sundew on the right and then us on the left there, and we're just cutting extra wide berths so that ship there could steam through that and get into wherever she was going, whether it be in the locks or. So I think this was taken closer to Sault Ste. Marie, I think.
Yeah.
So
any close calls?
Not with our vessel. We lost the Coast Guard cutter Mesquite on Lake Superior. I think it was December. I can't remember the year. 82, 83.
I have a book about that.
She ran aground, and she had to be abandoned. Our crews had to be rescued. And then they were going to try to fix her. And then by the time they were able to get her off the rocks, she was so badly damaged from sitting there all winter long that they just let her sink. They got off all the stuff that they could get off of her. And she's now a dive. You can dive on her in Lake Superior. So
Was that
Yeah, I have
another?
a book about
was
that
that another
somewhere.
vessel like this one?
yeah, so it'd
Yeah.
been exactly like the Wood Rush. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, same class.
So, yeah.
Huh. And
I've
Connor,
actually been.
Connor,
while
you
we've been
said you had a
chat-
book about it.
Yeah, I have a book. I just can't find it.
Oh.
I've actually been quietly going through the list of all the 180s, and there's a surprising amount of them still kicking around.
Yeah, there is.
They're all over the place. Like there's one in the Philippines, there's one in Nigeria, there's one in Estonia. There's like 2 being used for training ships on the West Coast and the Gulf. There's 2 museums.
There were a couple of movies made with some of them. I think there was a movie made. Red October had one of our ships in it.
Oh,
I
really?
mentioned that. Remember
Yes.
in the one we had with the live streamers or with the movie reviewers?
Yeah.
And I said
wait
that's
a
the
second.
one.
in the beginning of the movie.
And it destroys the illusion of Red October for me because I recognize that 180.
Oh, you're the only one.
Well, he would recognize it too, clearly.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, so the 2 of you guys, everybody else thinks it's a good movie, but yeah, it was in the beginning. It was the one that was like hitting its horn.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, good point.
And I can't remember the other one that I remember. I think it was in a Magnum PI, the original Magnum PI. I think there was one that they filmed
Nice.
in Hawaii. I can't remember the name of that one though. So yeah, these were good vessels. They were strong. They could take a beating. So
I love them.
And since we got you back on here, I got to ask you. So you said you're in this particular picture. You're the one that's standing.
I'm standing on the dock. Yeah, that's me, the tall, skinny guy with glasses. And then,
and you mentioned these guys were pretty rough types. I mean, who was the roughest out of all of them?
Oh God, there was a guy named I believe his name was Ryan, his last name, and you didn't go to the bar with him because you always ended up getting in a fight with somebody over something really stupid. So
Irish.
But these were a great bunch of guys. I mean, we even had a mascot, a dog. His name was Suji. Suji, as in Comet Cleanser is called Comet Cleanser, but the powder that we used to clean stuff with was called Suji powder. And so we named him after that. But we used to take him to the bars with us, and they would actually pour him a bowl of beer, and he'd sit up on the bar stool with us. Can you imagine 100-pound black lad sitting on a bar stool lapping up beer?
Oh, this wasn't some tiny little.
No, this was a big dog, and he used to go swimming. We used to dive, do swim call, and we would dive over the side, and we use what they called them Jacob's ladders. They're rope ladders that you would use to get back up on the deck. Well, this dog could climb one of those ladders and get back up on board ship, and he'd dive in the water with us. And of course, Lake Superior pretty cold. It doesn't get much above 50-some degrees in the water.
Yeah, it is cold.
Maybe it gets 55. So you didn't swim long, but we had a good time. So
I think that's that should be the new motto of the Coast Guard. Coasties, where even our mascot dogs drink.
Yeah.
Well, I have to admit that, today there's not as much of that going on as that used to go on. I mean, as far as the bars we're more conscious about that kind of thing because let's face it, we probably drank a little too much back in the day. Today it's a lot different. The new Coast Guard and we have women in the Coast Guard, and it's a different branch of service, not part of a Homeland Security. So not only do we guard the coast and perform a bunch of other duties, we were involved with the Desert Storm and the operation after that. We were in Kuwait. So Coast Guard does a lot of different things today, including drug running, trying to prevent drugs from coming in the country, keeping the illegals out of our country to the best of their abilities, from the water at least. So Homeland Security encompasses a lot of different things. So.
Well, Mike, thanks for letting us drag
you.
I'm
sorry. I just wanted to listen to you guys. I was hanging around, but I'm going to let you go now.
You can listen as long as you want. But I just wanted to say Michael Zronick, U.S. Coast Guard veteran and first responder to the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Thanks for joining us tonight.
You are absolutely welcome again.
And you have a great evening. And now we're going to kick you off and talk behind your back again.
Okay, that's okay. And I'm going to hang up now. So
you can stay on if you want.
All right.
Yeah, I really I enjoyed having him on. And if you guys wanted to do something with your museums, you should track him down.
Yeah.
He was fantastic. All right. Let's get to what you guys got going on at your museum. Shane Stevenson, curator, Buffalo and Erie County Naval and Military Park. YouTube channel, search for Buffalo Naval Park. What's the latest and greatest besides the weather?
Yeah,
and the Buffalo Bills.
Oh, who?
The Bills.
I don't know who that is.
You don't know who the Buffalo Bills are, the football team.
I say things like that. So
yeah, no one thinks it's funny.
Apparently not. I didn't hear one ounce of laughter with that. I mean, we're in our winter season now. We're doing winter tours, Blue Nose tours, we're calling them. We're starting a 3-year strategic plan. So all the staff is not only doing our short-term project duties during the off season, but then we're also mapping out a strategic plan for 3 years, and we each have long-term duties to do for that. Certainly ramping up dry dock. We're doing that destination dry dock series on our YouTube channel. Partnering with the HMCS Haida, so we'll be releasing some videos in the spring. So they've come down a couple times, toured around, and when the ship opens back up again, Stephen and I are going to get up there, and we're going to do some joint collaboration videos. Just a lot going on as always, but all good stuff.
I like some of the books you got behind you. I see Trial by Fire, P.T. Duderman back there. You've got a Horn Fisher book over your left shoulder.
I got about half.
Oh yeah.
And there's my buddy John McCain.
Yeah.
These are all just, I figured I gave a presentation to the National Maritime Historical Society last week, I think it was.
Okay.
And so I use this as the backdrop, which is nice. So
yeah, you got some good stuff back there.
Thank you.
I don't think favorites
right there, the Admirals.
I don't think I'm familiar with 6 frigates though.
Oh, that's the George Washington.
Oh,
and they're bringing frigates back, and they're going to name them all. Well, not the
Ian Toll's a good author.
This is the only book that I have, but yeah. Oh. I mean, anyway. Things are good. It's cold. I was going to have Lucas back tomorrow from Albany, doing some more of those archaeological videos, and I said he spends the night on board Little Rock, and I said, dude, there's no water. It's going to be about probably 20 degrees. So we kind of pushed that off for a little bit longer, but yeah, all in all, things are good. Of course, HINSA Symposium, working with the National Maritime Historical Society as well. So we're planning the dry docking stuff. We're planning a 3-year strategic plan. We're working on the HINSA Symposium. So there's a lot going on, guys. So
I got your email about that. I'm finishing up the proposal so I can send that to you.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah. Let's see. Shane Stevenson, curator, Buffalo and Erie County Naval Military Park. I mentioned the YouTube channel, search for Buffalo Naval Park, but you can also check out their website, buffalonavalpark.org, and see what and Connor's on top of things.
I'm on it.
Yeah, you are. Yeah. And thanks for getting those questions posted while we were talking to Mike. Good job with that too. All right. So now moving on to the USS Slater, John Epp, curator over there in Albany.
Is that a ship over there? What is that? Is that a ship?
There's something in there. Do you guys? So this picture was taken. What did you tell me? It was 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, a few years ago. But that's similar to how the river looks right now.
Really?
The snow. Yeah, the river's fully iced over. Not very thick, but it's fully iced. We got the circulators going, so there is very little ice between the ship and shore, which is great. But otherwise, it's been very cold. We're doing a couple winter restoration tours if people are interested. Otherwise, it's just business as usual.
What did you say the temperature was in your office?
With my space heater going, it's 45 degrees today.
Jeez.
When I come in the morning, it's around 29 degrees.
Oh man.
Yeah, I worked up in the building today. It was warmer.
Gotcha.
But yeah, the entire U.S. got. I mean, did you see the Alabama?
Yeah, I saw those.
The Gulf of Mexico is frozen.
The Gulf of Mexico?
Yeah,
Okay.
they got ice.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah, they
Well,
do.
I mean, it was minus
You know,
18 here in Minneapolis. So, yeah, that's crazy cold.
Doing a couple restoration projects on the ship, but no, nothing too major happening.
Like, what kind of restoration projects?
Currently it's set up as a 3-inch 50 cal magazine. During the war, it was most likely just a general storage compartment. And then in the 50s, we believe it was converted to a Hedgehog magazine.
Oh, yeah?
And today it's set up as a 3-inch magazine. So we're just, we have all the shelving down there and the 3-inch cartridges. So we're just repainting the compartment, and no one will probably ever see it. But
did the Slater ever hit any subs with its hedgehogs?
No, they hit a whale.
Yeah, I remember you telling me this story.
Yeah, I remember. I heard that too. Okay.
Yeah. They hit a dock in Key West.
Nice.
Yeah, they destroyed the dock. It wasn't the ship's fault. It was the pilot they had on board.
That's interesting.
Destroyed everything except.
See, I'm trying to post something. I've never seen this before.
What?
To answer a question about the naval park. Maybe you guys don't see it, but it says YouTube rejected your comment.
It did that to me earlier. There's something wacky going on with YouTube right now.
Oh, really? Oh,
yep.
Yeah.
No, they've just banned Shane.
Well, they just banned me. I'm trying to respond.
Did you use a bad word like bomb or shoot?
No. Like there's a conversation going of when's the good time to visit.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, Teresa responded, early summer, and so I was trying to confirm it, and it just keeps getting rejected.
Oh, really?
So let's say May and June is a great time to visit the naval park, and then maybe October, something like that before it gets, because now the heat's dissipating a little bit throughout the ships. But
Sir booms a lot. That's I did hear that story from one of the Greek sailors. I gave him a tour. He claimed they played chicken with a Turkish ship in the Aegean, and they scraped alongside each other.
Oh, really? Wow, interesting.
Damn.
Realistically, it probably would have also been an American-built ship.
Right.
What?
Depending on
that Turkish ship.
Good point. Yeah.
Possibly. One day we might learn the 40-year history of the ship in Greece, but
right
now it's difficult.
Yeah.
Let's see. John,
who's the owner of those records? Who's the owner of the Greek?
They have a naval archives and stuff there. It's just it's difficult finding someone that I can talk to. I've reached out to them directly, and they've gotten back to me, just sending a brief, blurb history of the ship, and it always ends with, "And today she's a museum in New York City." So hasn't been in New York City since '97. So it's.
Yeah, I tried reaching out to them too, and you just get these canned answers back. You're really not communicating with anybody.
No.
So I gave up. Let's see, John F. Curator, USS Slater in Albany. You can also check out their website, ussslater.org. When you're on YouTube, search for USS Slater in the search bar. They come right up. And then last but not least, of course, is Connor. What's going on at museum ships?
So we're changing things up this time. I'm just going to be updating about the museum ships today. Basically, not too much is happening. We're in our slow period. Obviously, we are working to add new ships to the site, or Pim is working to add new ships to the site. So whenever he gets around to doing that next, we have 502 ships currently listed on the website, which is museumships.us. So if anyone wants to plan a museum ship trip, you can go onto the website and map it out. But also, we are on Facebook, the Museum Ships Facebook group, where our community is constantly talking about all the latest news within museum ships, as well as just posting our pictures from our visits. And right now, there's a lot of snow being posted. A lot of snow. We have Alabama, we have Texas. The battleship Texas has snow on her. Patriots Point is closed right now, and a few other things as well. And then there was Haida posted a thing today about meeting with Shane. So Shane, you're on a Parks Canada Facebook account right now.
Yay! Yes, working with Haida. That's great.
Yeah, and Shane, question: will this be your first time seeing Haida?
Yes, absolutely. And probably April will be going up there.
Yeah, I will love to pick your brain about how different the ships are, because I got the opportunity to visit Sullivan's and then visit Haida only 24 hours apart.
Yeah.
And there was such a difference in even though they were built the same year and they're the same type of ship, there was such a difference in design philosophy that you could feel, especially when you're going through the ship, that I'll be interested to see what you think, having spent a lot more time on destroyers than I have.
It's interesting. When we meet, we've discussed some of those really early changes that, like the 3 boiler rooms as opposed to 2 boiler rooms. The bridge and command and control are totally different. Of course, the weapons platform's totally different. They were amazed when they walked through the Sullivans, and just like the mess berthing and things like that. And so that's going to be one of the things we'll address in the video, is potentially why there are differences, like the philosophy of British and Canadian shipbuilding versus United States shipbuilding, things like that.
What? Yeah. No, it's I can't wait to hear what you think about it.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed my visit.
I'll have my 12-page report to you the day after I return.
Let's see, for any kind of museum ship conversation, photos, anything like that, I strongly encourage you to check out the Museum Ships Facebook group if you haven't joined it already. Connor is one of the administrators, and there's a lot going on. So if you enjoy anything at all involving museum ships, strongly recommend you check out the Facebook group. Anything else you wanted to add, Connor?
Nope.
All right. Well, again, I want to thank Mike Zronik for joining us tonight and talking about not only the Edmund Fitzgerald, but also the, I guess you could call it, attempted rescue mission that he made to try and find any survivors of the Edmund Fitzgerald. So he was a first responder there. We're definitely glad that he was able to join us tonight. Obviously, you can click on the video if you didn't catch it live. Check out the Buffalo Naval Park, check out the USS Slater, check out my YouTube channel, History X, and you can get a replay of that video. And then last thing I want to mention is, one of the best ways that you guys can support the Buffalo Naval Park or the USS Slater is to watch their videos. One of the simplest yet most effective ways to support their work is to watch the videos, click subscribe, like the videos, all of that. It goes a long way to helping out their YouTube channels. Let's see. And my name is Ken Stano with the YouTube channel History X. Thanks for watching.
Check it out.
Yeah.
Good night.
Everyone have a good evening.